Well, today in our Signal conversation, we're welcoming Rebecca Kaden, a general partner at Union Square Ventures. Rebecca has been working there. How long now, Rebecca?
Coming up on 3 years.
Union Square Ventures, for those of our audience who may not be familiar with the firm, is, I would say, kind of the gold standard of venture capital, particularly on the East Coast and particularly in New York City. As a general partner, Rebecca, I'm curious, what is the role and the duties that you have there, on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. So we think about venture capital as a partner-driven endeavor with a collection of partners, and our goal is really to work together to come up with a thesis we can all believe in, and that means, constantly going through ideas and predictions and hypotheses and spinning them around until we get to something that we think is representative of where some part of the world is going. And that's been true since the beginning of the firm, way before I got there, but it's evolved over time. Then from there, we go meet lots and lots of, entrepreneurs and founders who are working on things related to that thesis and invest in just a few of them each year, and serve on the boards and try to be helpful to those companies as they grow.
Can you describe sort of concisely what the thesis is right now?
Sure. So Thesis 3.0, we call it, which suggests that there was a 1.0 and a 2.0 before it, and they build on each other, is about broadening access. So how do you leverage platforms and protocols to drive up value and down cost in different ways consumers and customers spend money? So we think about that as broadening access to knowledge, to well-being, and to capital primarily.
What's the general environment like in this sort of mid-pandemic era?
Well, I'd say a couple of things. First of all, I think we're still in a relatively irrational part of that market. If you just look at what the public markets have been doing, they suggest where we haven't balanced out. There's not a lot of rational action. So I don't think we fully can answer this question yet about how this really affects things in an ongoing way. But so far, you see two, very different ends of a spectrum. On one end, you see, industries like travel and transportation, entertainment, which, some are technology companies, some are not technology companies, but include things like Airbnb and Uber that have, had markets ripped out from under them. A lot of layoffs, are fundamentally changed. On the other end of the spectrum, you see categories like online education, telemedicine, new forms of connectivity that are seeing huge tailwinds from this moment in time, and significantly new behavior from customers that are willing to try new products and platforms than they were before. So it's a lot about balancing two very different things going on right now.
Many of those sectors that you mentioned that are hurting now were the darlings of the investment space, sort of 2010 to 2020. Them thinking the Ubers and the Airbnb, and so on. It's interesting how that's changed. The sectors that you've been active in tend to track to those sectors that seem to be getting some tailwinds. For example, education. Union Square Ventures made a number of investments there. I'm thinking Duolingo, Quizlet, Skillshare, all companies that were doing well previous to this. I imagine they're doing even better now. Is that true?
Yes. Online education as a whole, both in USV's portfolio and outside of it, is certainly having a moment and a lot of tailwinds. And we believe will have more than a moment, right? That is a behavior change that, while we don't expect growth levels to sustain at the kind of pace they are now in a pandemic when everyone's inside their home, we do believe that it's training behavior that will reset the baseline norms for a lot of what online education and education as a whole mean.
One of your investments, and I think it was relatively recent, is a company called Outschool. Can you tell us about that company? And as I understand it, there was quite a demand for their services starting in about mid-March. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, and Outschool is a good representative of what's going on in online education right now. So Outschool is a marketplace, an online platform for live online learning for students between the ages of 3 and 18. So families around the world can look through a marketplaces of classes. Teachers upload classes in a huge range of subjects, everything from, French 1 or history to debate and Spanish through Taylor Swift songs and Minecraft. So a big, big range. And they take it live online. So it's not recorded learning. Students are still learning together synchronously, which is, I think, something that parents had a lot of demand for in this moment where there's isolation and everyone's in their home. Outschool has been growing well over the last, couple of years. It's the entirety of its existence. We led a relatively early round 19 or 20 months ago. But what you see in this moment is that it just dramatically pushes that behavior forward. And that's because of necessity. A lot of new companies grow because of slow and steady behavior change where people adopted over time, but necessity changes behavior change unlike anything else. And so when you have that, you can create a different kind of growth curve.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing that I know you guys are interested in, and you referenced it a bit in your description of the thesis, is how online communities form and grow on a platform. Can you give us a couple of examples of companies that where you've seen those communities start to strengthen because of the times we're in?
Yeah, I think what we're interested in there is that there are platforms for connectivity, like Facebook, right? That keeps us all connected. But when we really look at it, that doesn't really create belonging. It doesn't really make you feel close to people. And I think this moment is really bringing it out. And so we've been interested in other moments that not only create connectivity, but create a kind of belonging. So I think about a platform like Stash. Stash is a mass market financial services company. It helps users invest and save and things like that. But it also has a community behind it, and the community forms on Facebook or off Facebook and in groups they can facilitate and allows people to come together and talk about something that they care about, but with a common interest. And you're seeing in these moments, and that there are examples of that throughout our portfolio. We have a live streaming commerce company called Shop Shops where people can watch people live stream, but also talk to each other and engage. And all of those are really strong right now. One, because the attention economy is stronger than ever, right? People are in their home and looking for things to do, but also people are looking to connect with each other in different kinds of ways.
Do you see a set of behaviors emerging from the leaders that might give some insights to our audience as to how to manage something like this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think our portfolio leaders have embraced remote work in a more permanent way or potentially more permanent way very quickly. And when they think about that, they think less, we're going to get rid of offices forever, and more, a flexibility is probably inherent in how we work. And we have to kind of develop procedures and processes around that. And a lot of that's around ramping up the types of communication to make teams feel connected to each other even when they're apart. So virtual stand-ups, virtual community events, kind of doing things that might feel unnatural at first in this format until they feel natural because we know they're important to develop the cohesion. I think technology in general can be very good for continuing and sustaining relationships, but it can be challenging for creating relationships. And
Right.
that will be something that people and teams need to learn.
I know you work mostly with, early stage startups, and then you stay working with them as they grow and even as they go public. Um,
Yeah.
but Procter and Gamble is a almost 200-year-old global public company. But the company's always expressed an interest in learning from the entrepreneurial ecosystem. Do you have any advice for leaders and managers at the company Procter and Gamble as to what they might learn from this ecosystem?
Big companies have the benefit of historical view that startups don't have and scale. And what small companies have is the benefit of being really nimble and being able to try things really fast. And at the best, I think they can add those to each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us for a Signal conversation, and good luck with the work there at Union Square Ventures.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.